Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. And first applicant, you're zooming in. Can you hear me?
Still connecting to audio.
Oh, yeah, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's muted.
Oh, great. We can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you too.
As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of a respiratory illness such as coughing or sneezing. If you're experiencing flu-like symptoms, we're requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. And I would like to call the meeting to order. The date is July 13th. And I would like to make the following statement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. The members of the panel, to my immediate left is Lynn Nesbitt, and to her left is Carrie Linklater. Our assessor is Jamie Faugier, and our secretary is Belhan Roja. And my name is Brent McIntyre, and I'll be chairing the meeting today.
Okay.
We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment role in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. Matters for which the revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. In the case of this particular room, it will be by affirmation. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it in the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included within the Board's orders. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing-in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony is followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private to make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Thank you. The first property on the docket, and just to confirm with the assessor and the applicant, is 620 Dakota Street, Unit 3, and it involves 3 roll years, 2018, 2019, and 2020. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, Jamie, you may proceed. And I think we should, oh, sorry.
Please state your full name.
Jamie Faugier.
And you affirm the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you. Please state your full name.
My full name is AKM. Is the first name, and last name is Bhuiyan, Bhuiyan.
And you affirm the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think because it's the same property, we might as well do all 3 at the same time.
Right.
Makes it.
Okay.
Panel members?
Yep.
Here.
Now, because of the different years, I do have some different comparables for 2020. But maybe I can try to use the 2020 brief and then just ask you to sort of negate the post-reference rents for the reference year 2016 for the 2018 and 2019 assessments. Would that work?
Panel members?
Just stick to one, or?
Or should we hear one of, we're not going to hear 18 and 19. We should just hear.
Yeah, those two will be the same.
They're the same
Right.
values.
Yes.
We'll have, I think you should present the 18 brief. And
Sure.
then the 29 brief.
Okay, that works.
Agreement, ladies?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll begin with the 2018 brief. The roll year is 2018, and we're also going to deal with 2019. The file number is 19-4983, and then the 2019 file number is 19-4982.
Yes.
And the business assessment ID is 53579. And so this is a relatively new building on Dakota, beside the Dakota Hotel. This is a relatively new tenant. I believe they began occupying the space in 2018, I believe. And so for the 2018 and 2019 briefs, I've looked at medical, different types of medical tenancies, sort of in St. Patel generally. I do have one in Sage Creek here. It provides a little bit more contrast for a newer area that, might see broader new development around it. So you can see I have some comparables on Dakota as well, St. Mary's, as well as Meadowood. And for the reference year of 2016, so our reference year is April 1st, 2016, the rents range from $19 up to $28, with the majority of them being in the basically $19 to $21 range. Here we have used a base rent of $20.90. So I think for 2018 and 2019, we're well within that range. My understanding, I believe the liability has also been appealed. This is a medical clinic. But you can see on page 3 of my brief, in this case, I've only included part of the company search that I've done. In the 2020 brief, you can see the full company search. But of note here is the entity type, and this is a business corporation. So this, as far as I know, is not a registered charity. And so for business assessment, you can see on our second page, there's some information under section 316 that relates, 317 that relates to exemptions. And unfortunately, I can't see how this property would qualify for an exemption. So I believe that it is the liability is being assessed correctly here. So that's the 2018 and 2019 presentation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Do you want me to ask you a question, or I have some question regarding basic understanding of the process, how you assess, as well as the terminologies. I'm just new in this area, and I started the business on 2018. So if you allow me to ask some basic question, which may look like everybody knows, but I just want to clarify. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. So according to the contract I have with WRHA, in that contract, they call additional rent, and it includes realty taxes. So I was in my understanding that the realty taxes means municipal tax, real property tax, levies, charges, and assessment, and school taxes charged upon the building and the land, that kind of stuff. So it's written in this agreement. So the tax assessment or something what you are doing, is that different than what I said in the agreement?
Right, so the realty taxes are something that are different or separate from the business assessment taxes. Am I to understand, as far as I know, I don't want to ask a question of you because that's my job later, but I was not aware that your business is renting, is it a subtenant, I suppose, from WRHA?
Yes.
But regardless, the subtenants are still accessible for business tax under the legislation, is my understanding. I'm not familiar with the agreement that you have with the WRHA.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to follow the provisions that are outlined in the City of Winnipeg Charter. And unfortunately, I don't have any basis that I would necessarily see an exemption.
Okay, so now at this point, I have to ask like a question of exemption too, because we are actually subtenant of rent recovery from WRHA. WRHA actually gave up this quick care clinic and offered us as a rent recovery. So if that is a issue, or that is a question for WRHA, then we should be falling under that government exemption. And to tell you one other story beside, is just due to the COVID-19, we had to go through the process. We wanted to apply for the government benefit provided to the business tenants, and WRHA declined because they are the government. We cannot really go through the process, and they are not going to approve us to apply for this. So if that is the situation, then where we are falling? Are we falling under the exemption, or we have to pay the rent? First thing was, I do not know whether this is called realty tax. I will go through these things again. I'm very new in this area. If it is taxable, of course, I will pay the tax. But if it is not, then of course I will have to provide the argument. So that's why I'm asking where I am. First thing is that realty tax. I know you do not see, you did not see the agreement, but the agreement clearly says the additional rent, which means realty tax. So the tax you are assessing, it is not realty tax. Is that right?
Correct. It's business assessment tax. And that's, they're related, but it is different from the realty tax.
Okay, that thing we will be probably, if I produce some document, maybe you can check later date. I cannot really argue because I did not send this agreement to you. I was not really thinking I should raise the issue. Then I could submit to you as an evidence to have a look whether that is the right thing or not. Maybe if you allow me after, then I will send these things. But the issue is there. So as you mentioned in exemption, so should we falling under the exemption or not?
My understanding is that it should not be exempt as a subtenant of the WRHA. For example, I think that probably the nature of the unit, I would try to speculate, would have been something that would be more conducive to a tenant that was of a medical nature. But if they're looking to sublease their space, the occupancy really goes to the new tenant there, and under normal circumstances, a private medical clinic would not qualify for business assessment exemption. So I would not expect it to happen in this case. For example, in properties that the WRHA owns themselves, they can lease out units to different office tenants. And those tenants are still accessible. They do not receive the benefit of an exemption. So I don't see why this would be different. I know the access clinics that the WRHA has run have recently seen decisions that have granted them exceptions, but those are limited to, I think there's 5 or 6 of them in the city. And as far as I know, regular medical clinics of this nature do not receive the benefit of an exemption.
If you allow me to talk, I will just add 1 or 2 more sentences. I understand what you are saying. Quick care clinic was an exemption under WRHA, I believe, as you mentioned that access. But we took over this clinic and to carry out or to provide the same service or similar service to the community instead of quick care clinic. So it's a benefit, I should say, towards the government, like the unit, and also it is in their website. They are also providing the information like this unit is giving the similar service. So, and also we are part of their rent recovery. So I'm not sure how should I put my argument in a legal way, but we are actually supporting them in the recovery process. If you consider this is a quick care clinic, and if you consider we are doing the business, then we should actually get some benefit. I always talk to the WRHA in the same manner that we should be considered as a rent recovery tenant. It's not just a regular tenant.
Yeah, as far as I know, just with my familiarity with the legislation, is that it's required that they be a nonprofit, a charity, basically. And in this case, your business is not. So I think that's the distinction that I'm seeing here. But we can leave it up to the panel to determine that as well.
So is there any opinion from other member of this board?
We can't give you our opinion at this point. It will be reflected in the order when it's mailed.
Okay, that is fine. I just want to move forward. Okay, the points when we discuss the which property is actually considered, which property is not considered. I just received this 3 of them a few minutes ago by email. I was not aware of which property was considered, which property is not considered. One thing I can see very easily, Sage Creek one, which is I know in this neighborhood when I look around to rent a facility or area to start my business, I looked around, of course, all over the Winnipeg. So I was looking also these spaces in Sage Creek.
I'll just stop you there. You're giving evidence, right? This is your opportunity to ask questions of the assessor only.
Okay.
So you can feel free to bring that in your presentation, that information. But right now you should just be asking the assessor questions related to his information.
Right, I am asking about that because how he considered all these numbers, like in the 3 different assessments, he considered 3 different numbers of premises. So that's why I do not know how he picked up these numbers or picked up these addresses.
Yeah, so to give you just a sense of how I determined which comparables I'd be selecting and looking at. as I mentioned, these are all different tenants that are in medical in nature. I think there's a couple chiropractors. I think there's an ear specialist and things of that nature, and some different dental offices as well as doctors' offices. So I tried to look to St. Vital. I do agree that the tenant located at 50 Sage Creek is in a brand new area that's servicing people in a brand new development. And so I included that more to contrast it, to say, typical medical tenancies of a similar size to yours at the reference date would be in the scale of what I've included here. However, if you were to look at sort of a step above where you are, you'd be looking at significantly higher rent. And so it was more of a contrast that I was providing by including the tenant in Sage Creek. So I would emphasize to the board to look to the other comparables that are more comparable.
If you allow me to say something also, like as I was talking about, like I looked around, so those facilities are very new, brand new, and they have bigger facility, they are a newer building, they have everything new, and the information, like say Bridgewater, I live in this area, also there is a clinic too, their rent is higher. So I consider only if you exclude that Sage Creek as an outlier on this, then it is going to be, if you average it, if you just consider that outlier, you'll see a big difference in the rent assessment. That's what my argument is. I could not go around and find out like which facility is renting how much. So this is a very good statement what I see just few minutes ago. And just consider Sage Creek as an outlier because it's a very, very brand new facility. This building is not brand new building. This building is really old, and not I'm saying old, it's an older facility, but WRHA renovated this. So consider this as a neighboring area of the St. Vital. That's all. I don't have any other argument. Just exclude as an outlier that Sage Creek building, which is a brand new building. No more.
Is that all your questions?
Yes, it's all. I don't have any other thing.
Okay, we're going to proceed to the 2020 roll because it's all the same property.
Yes.
Just a minute. Lynn, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Carrie?
I have no questions.
I just have one question, Dave.
Sure.
If you turn to page 2 of your brief, can you read into the record subsection 319.1?
Sure. So it says subtenants and assessments, 319, parentheses 1. Where the occupier of a premise sublets all or part of it, an assessor may issue the assessment for the premises or part to the occupier and the tenant, or either of them.
So my question is, does that apply in this case?
My understanding here is that my interpretation is that business assessment is an occupancy tax, and we're taxing the occupant just because the tenant of WRHA has a leasehold interest in this property and has subleased it out, to me does not warrant the benefit to the subtenant business, because it could be a shoe store, it could be whatever it is in nature. And I think you ought to look at the recipient of the exemption, and in this case, It's a private clinic that would be receiving that exemption. And I don't think that the legislation was intended for that purpose. And I think to support that, I would again mention that there are WRHA properties. They own the real estate itself, and they've leased out different units in their property that weren't required for their operation, just like this is not required for their operation, to different tenants that, again, don't normally see an exemption. And in those cases, the BA the business assessment is still assessed. And the realty receives a benefit because the ownership is the WRHA. However, the individual business assessment is not exempt in those cases. So to me, it's not exactly the same thing, but I think logically it supports the idea that these are occupancy taxes. The occupant is not somebody who normally receives the benefit of business assessment. Normally, the tenant pays the business taxes. And so therefore, I don't see why an exemption would necessarily be made in this case.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. You can proceed with 2020.
Okay, for 2020, again, we're located at 3-620 Dakota Street. The file number here is 195013. And again, it's the same clinic that we're looking at. And so here we have the ability, because of the reference date, to look at the lease that's being paid. They're reporting $21.50 for that space, which appears to be a sublease. Now that we're learning a little bit more about the property. The first comparable that I have here is one of the neighboring units of the subject. And so they're paying $27 a square foot. And then below that, the rest again, there's a dentist, medical center, pharmacy, chiropractor, dental clinic, physio. We have one as a center for alternative healing, hearing center, as well as a pharmacy here. So they range, for the reference date of 2018, they range from as low as $19 up to, if you, again, disregard the Sage Creek comparable, they range up to $24.60. We're coming in here at $22.97. I would suggest that we're probably a little bit on the higher side for the subject, but we are still within that range. Again, the subject purportedly pays $21.50 a square foot here. So that's my presentation.
Thank you. Do you have any questions from that presentation just now?
Yes. So far I understood, and it was in my understanding also, it is going to be the comparable of the similar businesses. So the Unit 2 is not a clinic which is providing the service or non-medical in nature. So I will strongly recommend to exclude this dissimilar, although it is our neighbor, but the business in nature, how you do the business, how much you do the business, or this is something a big issue for us to actually make a profit or something. What I should say, as a clinic or a medical clinic, what is our overhead, everything together is a big consideration. So I should say this neighboring unit should be also excluded as a outlier. That is
The board will discuss it in deliberation after the hearing is concluded.
And if I may just, for clarity purposes, again, I don't disagree. I include the Unit 2, 620 Dakota Street, simply for illustration purposes. I don't think it's the most comparable on the list here. I think that it's just something to be aware of if you are sort of taking a wider glance at the market and what's available and what's in the area. Only for curiosity purposes to see in this, I think it's approximately 2012 or 2011, this strip mall, this neighboring unit, to get a sense of what they pay, even just for the scale of it. But again, for the analysis, I would think the other medical clinics, aside from Sage Creek, that are in St. Vital, would be relied upon most for the analysis of the board, would be my suggestion.
I understand what you are saying. So anyway, I just put forward this issue to the board to consider because it was my understanding that it would be this similar, because the similar business will pay similar overhead, similar load of like everything should be like I don't know, the equipment and other stuff, what the medical clinics or these similar facilities are using. So they are these similar. So that's why. So I just wanted to put forward this for consideration regarding this. But I have some other points also I would like to say because in 2020, the year we are like you keep increasing or the assessment keep increasing, but we actually started the business 2018, and in Manitoba, the irony is that the business of this kind is not really a big boom or grow dramatically, because you will not find many doctors, and everybody, our Manitobans, knows that this kind of business looks for the doctor, but there is not enough doctors to be housed in a kind of a business. I have at least 3-4 doctors capacity in this clinic, but I have only one doctor running the whole clinic. So these are also another parameters for the 2020. Like if we just keep increasing, and I'm not going to increase, I could not increase my business also. So that's something I also would like to consider the issue by the board, that why should I go for an increase while I cannot really afford it, like that kind of thing. So in summary, actually, when I thought that, sorry.
We're not at summary yet.
Okay.
Sorry. Did you have any other questions of the assessor?
I will go for some other things, but as you said, it's not summary, but it is going to be all over, like all 3 assessment together. So I will be, and at the end I will do it, because I pay one page of summary I wrote in the document I submitted.
Yeah, and you'll get your chance to speak to that.
Sorry?
You'll get your chance to speak to that. We just have to finish with his testimony.
Right, I understand. 2020, I have these things. I don't have. I'm just very new beginner. I just wanted to approach.
Oh, that's fine. So you're done with his questioning him?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Lynn, do you have any questions?
I have a question. Jamie, you mentioned that the actual lease of $21.50, we can see that it's lower than your base ARV per square foot.
Right.
You mentioned that it's a little on the high side. The modeling is a little bit on the high side, but it's within the range.
Right.
So what is an acceptable range from the assessment department's perspective?
I would say typically we strive to be within 10%. I think that's the IAAO standard.
And can you just, for the record, say what the IAAO standard is?
So as far as I know, the IAAO standard related to the 10% is in fact for the realty that to meet their guidelines, it is to be within plus or minus of the value within 10%. So I don't know that there is a standard when it comes to a specific rental rate.
Okay.
You know, this is something that's done on a modeling basis. And certainly February 1st, 2018 is very close to our reference date. And I would not be opposed to consideration of using $21.50. Again, this is a newer building, and we've used our model to generate the rate of $22.97. And that seems to be more or less supported by the market. Again, I think case could be made that it should be set at $21.50.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Carrie?
Jamie, you said that this building is new. Do you know the exact age?
I regret not looking that up right before I came. But between 2011 and 2013, that may be something that the owner may have that information. But it's beside the Dakota Hotel, which underwent that renovation. And as far as I know, this portion was built new. That is my understanding, approximately 2011, 2012, 2013.
And in regards to your rent comparables then, besides the Sage Creek, which we know that's much more recent, do you know what the ages of those properties are at all?
They would, so for example, 600 St. Anne's Road, that's mid-2000s. I don't have an exact age. In fact, I don't really have an exact age on any of these, but I can give you sort of a sense. 730 St. Anne's Road, early 2000s. 845 Dakota Street, I believe that's sort of mid to late 90s, I believe. And then I think most of the ones on St. Mary's and Meadowood, you'd be looking at 80s or 90s with some updates coming through renovations, mostly on the exterior. And then, of course, any fit up following any change in tenancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions, and you may proceed with your presentation.
Okay. So you are allowing me to present something like the the one I wrote. Is that the one you are asking me?
Well, you submitted a presentation to the board
Right.
by email. That's the presentation that we have before us.
Okay.
So that's what you can speak to.
All right. I don't want to go through like line by line. The basic part is here. I wanted to consider our location and neighboring location. Actually, I asked question about that to be outlier, why it is outlier, or the similar business. So those are the things I already mentioned in my write-up. And also our business is only starting in the February. This kind of business takes a longer time to settle. So that's why I argued that it's not really running its full speed. So there should be a consideration for this. It means that we're supposed to get more physicians, but now we have only one physician. That's it. And also I would like to say the total square footage of the accommodation if you consider that this usefulness of this total 2000 or 2228 square foot, we are now unable to really use that total square footage. So it's the same thing what I said before, like we are not in the full capacity. So another point what I mentioned in there is it's a government sublease from a government. When the government negotiate this the rent, at that time we were not there, but we had to take over from the government. So this is something a big difference between the rent negotiation government and a corporation. Government is leasing from them, and then we are subleased from the government. So there is a consideration. I should say, like, government do not care about. It's just a government facility. They pay as a reasonable. But for us as a private business owner, we could do a little bit more rent negotiation unless it is if this facility is owned by a private organization. We are taking a sublease from government. So that is a perspective I wanted the board to be considered here. Our negotiation ability was less because it was a WRHA already rented with some value square footage. So that is one thing I try to bring into the board. And like when I calculated my way of square footage, probably that is wrong when I see this comparison. So I actually I try to do in the neighboring ones, starting from 19, like unit 3, unit 2, unit 1. They have different variation. In unit 1 is also like it's probably 20, or I forgot the unit 1's number. So they are also a they're paying also the lower in the same building, the same area. But that is not the main issue. I'm saying probably I did the wrong calculation. So my point E should not be a big issue for me now, but I would like to request also the year of 2020, which is a business. We already reduced some business due to COVID-19. So that is also a point of consideration. Please look at our perspective. We will pay the rent tax, of course, but we have to earn something. We could not really get any subsidy or anything from WRHA because of they are a government.
Okay, is that your presentation?
Yes, that is my presentation.
Thank you very much. Jamie, any questions?
Sure. Just one question here. Looking at your presentation, I see, I think on page 5, it mentions that your base rent is $22.25. So that's what you pay the WRHA per square foot. Is that correct? Just in terms of net rent?
That is our agreement. By agreement, we are paying that amount, the one I mentioned in my write-up. Yes, we are paying that much.
Okay, and you began occupancy in February 2018, is that correct?
Yes, February, yeah.
Okay. Do you happen to know what the WRHA pays per square foot?
No, they did not disclose that thing for me.
Okay.
No, it was a negotiation. That's why I do not know, and WRHA did not really allow me to, and I could not really get this. So they said it is our, okay, no problem. So that's what I did. Like, whatever they gave me through my agent, I just agreed to come in.
Right. Okay, well, thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Lynn?
I have no questions.
Sure.
I have no questions.
And I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation. You'll hear from us within a couple of weeks as to our decision. And if you want to appeal it further, there's information in there on how to do that. Alrighty?
Okay, is there something you want me to answer, or I really did not get your point? Can you
No,
repeat?
you provided us with the information, and we have the document you submitted. And we'll take all the information we've heard today into account.
Yes. Okay.
Alrighty?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good day.
Okay. Have a good day.
But we still have live. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll deal with that.
You are from the NCR presents.
Hello, Mr. Rack. Okay, Jamie, the property on the docket next is 120 Higgins Avenue.
So the property is 120 Higgins Avenue, as we say. The file number is 19-5119. And the business assessment ID is 22227. And the business name is Eliminator RC. This is a retail store that sells remote control toys, as well as some, models like model building cars and things like that. This is located on Higgins. From the exterior, it looks like a building that sort of fits into Higgins. It's sort of, it's being used as a retail store, but it has a bit of an air of sort of a, maybe light manufacturing or something like that. Looks a little bit more industrial. There's really only windows in terms of the front door, basically. So we mostly looked at, actually I think all of my comparables here are industrial, probably mostly light manufacturing or storage. And we tried to stick mostly to the area. And so the subject has 12,287 square feet. And our areas that we've looked to range from 6,000 up to 39,000. And, I think maybe the most relevant would be ones that have areas between, 10 and 12,000 or 14,000. And as a result, the rents that we've seen range from 364 up to about 831. And with the realty, we actually had a recommendation as well. And we would extend the recommendation in this case to the business assessment. We'd recommend using a rate of $4.25 plus occupancy costs. And that takes the ARV from 99,780 down to 82,320. Now, coming up with that rate, we've both looked at the comparables that we've come up with, as well as this is a property that's been appealed a number of times. It was purchased in 2009, and the subsequent assessments, just generally speaking, from that time were close to the sale price, and then subsequently they've been decreasing. And for the 2014 municipal board appeal, we reached an agreement with a certificate of agreement using a rate of, I believe, $3.86 a square foot. And that's again for the 2014 assessment cycle. And so here we've gone up 40 cents or so up to $4.25. And we think that's a reasonable rate for this unit. Again, it's being used as retail, and if it were straight retail in an area that had more retail around it or was located closer to a residential neighborhood, maybe you'd be looking at somewhere closer to $10. But given the condition of the building, the way that it's set up and the area, I think that $4.25 is supported by our comparables here.
Thank you. Lyle, how do you feel about that recommendation?
I'm not won't accept that.
Okay. Any questions of James?
Yes, you did inspect the building, correct?
Correct.
And you, there's 3 sections of that building. One is built in 1912, and that was a section we walked through that had the roof leaks and the plywood floor, correct?
Sorry, the roof leaks?
Yeah, the roof is all.
I did not observe any roof leaks in particular. I will agree, maybe to your broader point, that there's sort of some piecemeal construction in sections. And I'm not suggesting that there weren't roof leaks. I just did not specifically see that when I was there.
And then the other building section is built about 1941. So would you agree that those 2 sections from your inspection look pretty well like they're in original condition?
I would be speculating, but they were not quite the same condition as the main area that had the checker tile floor and the access to the merchandise, through the aisles. I would say that those areas had maybe slightly lower maintenance to them.
And with this recommendation at 4 1/4, what comparables are you using to determine that 4 1/4?
Well, the comparables that we've begun with are comparables that were found in our realty brief, as well as some comparables that were used previous cycles. I think looking as low as $3.75 and up to we have a few in the $5 to $6 range. I think that those are fair. We have one here on Waterfront, the Restmore bedding. I've been in this building. It's an older building. It's located probably just a few minute walk from the subject. I wouldn't suggest that it's superior. They're using $4.25 on 10,500 square feet. I think that's a reasonable comparison.
Okay, so in your comparables, you do have 2 comparables. They're not numbered. The third one down from the top is at $3.75, and the third one from the bottom is at $3.64. So by your comparables,
right,
it could be in that range too, correct?
Well, whenever you're looking at comparable leases and comparable properties, if you're being honest, you're going to see a range in lease rates. I don't have the details on all of these properties, and I have not inspected all of them. I wanted to try to provide a range and a broad range of properties to see more of a snapshot of what's available and what the rates are. And they are at 364 and 375. And again, we agreed previously for the 2014 municipal board that we would use a rate of $3.86. So, that's 2014. We've shifted our reference date here, and I think that $4.25 is reasonable.
Okay. And I guess the first 8 comparables were the ones you used on your realty brief, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. That ends my questions.
Thank you. Lynn?
Yes, thank you for clarifying that municipal board 2014.
Correct.
And it was a certificate of agreement.
That's right.
Okay, so can you give me that final number that you are verbally recommending?
So the final number that we're verbally recommending here today for the 2020 business assessment is $82,320. Correct. And that's based on $4.25 plus the occupancy
And
cost.
did you say that 425 was also used in the realty?
That was our recommendation in the realty.
And it's been appealed to the board
It has not been appealed
by
to the
any,
municipal board.
by
By
any
either.
party?
No, and just to be clear though, the board did not take our recommendation, and nor did Mr. Rack. I think the rate that they used was approximately $3.50. That's correct. Correct. In their decision. So I'm being consistent with the position that we brought forward to the realty hearing, but it is not one that was adopted by the board.
So it's not inconsistent, therefore, with what is on the roll now.
Correct.
The 425 would not be consistent.
So what's on the roll right now in terms of the realty value is using $3.50.
Right. And that was not appealed by either party.
It was not.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you.
That's all my questions.
Thank you. Carrie?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, Mr. Forget. So this building is in 3 different parts. Is that my understanding?
There's 3. It was built in sort of 3 different phases, I suppose. So there's an addition sort of to the southeast, and then I think to the east. Would that be fair to say?
If you're indulging me, if you look at page 3 of my brief, there's a real view, you can see all 3 sections.
Okay. Sorry, so I'm just going to go back. So Mr. Forget, you can't answer the question.
So there are 3. It's built in 3 sections, and they do vary in their age. If that is. If that answers
That's not
your
exactly the question.
Sorry.
So I'm then assuming, and I'm going by Mr. Rack's picture here on the front. So the front street section, is that the newer section?
I believe so.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you look on page 3 of my brief on the area.
That's okay. I just questioned Mr. But thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I just have a question in regards to your brief. So you mentioned that it was reduced on the realty side by the board.
Correct.
So I guess I'm just curious. So you wrote this report without acknowledging or looking at that the realty side had been reduced, because then I'm thinking you would have had the recommendation on here, and then also in turn, would that not affect what rent comparables you produced?
So, and just to be totally clear on this, we had, Mr. Rock and I had the realty appeal in the fall of 2019, and the city of Winnipeg was not successful in our position. And our position at the time was to take it from the original assessed value, and we proposed a reduction based in part using a rate of $4.25. And so when we had another look at it, that was our recommendation. So that was our position. As mentioned, the board was not in agreement with us, and Mr. Rack was not in agreement with us. So I'm not trying to ignore that. However, again, I did take a fresh look at the history of the property, the sale that's there, what's out there in the market in terms of rental rates, and had a conversation with my supervisor, and we agreed that our original position of $4.25 was fair and supported. And so we have not changed our recommended assessed value. The board arrived at their own value, which we have not adopted.
Right.
We have not appealed it further, but that becomes another conversation about the sort of internal decision making with the department on resources and what they prioritize as going forward to be appealed further to the board. And we did not pursue that.
Sorry, I'm maybe not making myself clear. So we have this brief you prepared, and you've got a base ARV of 567, but then you've come with a recommendation of 425. So I'm just wondering, for the process, purely the process,
Right.
when did you come to that decision? I guess I'm asking, why don't you rewrite the brief then with the rec on?
With the 425.
Because, sorry, my understanding is you're giving us a brief with rent comparables based on 567 a square foot. Do you know?
So the rent comparables are independent of what the original assessment is, and so
So
I
using
wasn't targeting rental rates in the market or anything like that by compiling my comparables. These comparables are just what's out there, and then that's why you'll see some that are 364 and some that are 831. I'm not attempting to target a specific number, but after I've looked at these, I'm in agreement still with our previous position that $4.25 is fair within what we've seen in the market. And in terms of why maybe at the top of the brief we didn't include the calculation of our recommended value is because the top of the brief relates to the original assessment that has went out, and that's what's under appeal today. So, for example, I'm not asking it to be confirmed. However, if we were to be asking it confirmed, that's the number that would be confirmed. So it's included there simply because that's how it's produced, and to remove it, I would then be describing what the original assessment is, and we wouldn't have that in the brief. Now, it's a fair point that it would be probably more helpful if I had written out a detailed breakdown of the recommendation. I can present that verbally, but unfortunately, that's all I prepared for today.
Your rent comparables, are those all retail?
They are all industrial. So again, this is a property, and we don't typically include pictures in the business assessment appeals, but this is probably a case where it would be helpful. And Mr. Rack has provided pictures, and I know we'll get to that shortly. But it is a larger property, an older building. It's in amongst industrial buildings, sort of at the foot of the Disraeli Bridge. And if you to get a sense of why we might be comparing it to industrial properties, even just downtown in the Exchange District, as you pass some of these buildings, some of them are categorized as industrial, some of them are categorized as retail, some of them are categorized as office. And from the outside, they appear to be the same type of building. Physically, there's no significant difference from the outside. it comes down to more of their use. And so in terms of, if you look at a building and you think, if this, if Eliminator RC was to go vacant tomorrow, what would be its most likely use? It is a difficult building because of the way that it's configured and where it is. It would either be a less attractive retail store, like perhaps it is right now, or it would be of a light manufacturing use or storage use. One of those reasons is it doesn't have, I don't recall the exact height, but it's probably 12 or 13 square feet, or 12 or 13 feet in terms of the ceiling height. And I think in large warehouse or intensive use industrial properties, you probably have greater clearance, as well as the flooring is plywood or something that you basically couldn't be installing heavy machinery on or driving forklift through per se. So any use would be, again, lighter manufacturing use. There's sewing factories and things like that in the exchange here. I think that's something that could be possible. Or, again, less desirable retail. And so the retail that's available for us to research tends to be things that have rents like Giant Tiger or things of that nature. And I think that goes too far the other way. And I think that would be overstating it if we were to be looking at, dollar stores in the area or Giant Tiger. So it's a little bit difficult to know what it comes down to for what's out there for us to compare it to. So here we've attempted to look at buildings that are maybe similar vintage, similar size, similar areas, that have uses that hopefully would be permitted in the subject building here.
Can you just tell me when you inspected the building?
I think it was 2016, if I remember correctly, or between 2016 and 2018, Mr. Rock and I inspected it together.
Sometime in the summer.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions. Okay, Mr. Rack?
Sure. The building itself is basically, if you look at page 1 of my brief, the building is basically 3 sections. One was built in 1912, another section was built in 1941, and then a small section was built in 1963. And before I get into that, just take a look at the front of the building. You can see what it looks like. I'd like to go to my rebuttal brief, which are the first 8 properties.
Just hang on.
Okay.
There it is.
What's it titled?
05, it's 05120 Higgins Avenue.
Yeah. Assessment and taxation, and I have applicant. Oh, I got it. It's in paper right in front.
No, this
It's
is
different.
Sorry, what's the number on it? Because I don't have an address.
05120. Applicant. Do you see it? It's up top. It's in that. It's in. I'll just if you make this wide.
Uses us when we get a paper copy and it's electronic.
Yeah.
Well, like I
That's
said,
okay.
so we're good?
Yeah.
Okay. So these comparables are with the first 8 that the assessor produced for his comparables for realty value. And when he made the recommendation, he actually had no comparables for that 425. I have no idea where that number came from. But if you look at the first one, that's 771 Main Street, that's a recycling depot. And you can see inside that it has obviously industrial style concrete floors that allow forklifts and actual trucks to come in that building for recycling. So it's open area, as you can see, and it's obviously not finished, but I would say it's not comparable to the subject property. It's actually just as you come underneath the subway from Higgins, so it is on Main Street, better location. This comparable number 2 is 1309 Mountain, Freed International. If you turn the page, you'll see that it's actually a modern day warehouse. No dates were giving us to construction date on his briefs. I don't know how old these are, but you'll see there's actually 6 loading docks. So I would say that's a distribution warehouse or storage warehouse, which would allow forklifts to run around, and also the floors would have to be capable of holding that. So the industrial style floors and the heights, I'm guessing probably 18 to 21 feet. Number 3 is on Washington. You'll see that as an industrial building. It's got a number of overhead doors and large, to the left, there's actually quite a large parking area. So that would not be comparable to the subject. That's a drive-through, basically doesn't have loading docks. Comparison number 5 is actually Western Glove on Logan. And that is definitely not comparable to the subject property. That's quite a modern building. I don't know when it was built, I'm going to guess the 70s, but that is a modern facility. If you turn to the page, comparable number 7 is actually 100 Higgins. That happens to be one of my properties, and that's actually a service garage for semi-trailers. As you see the semi in front of it, and there's actually, it hides one door, so there's actually 5 doors there. The next comparison is comparable number 8. That is Vita Products, Vita Foam, Waterfront Drive. It actually has, again, drive-up loading docks, 3 of them. And I would say that's not comparable. Comparable on the bottom 9, 1000 Alexander, is actually a very nice building, newer. I ran out of ink, so I couldn't make it. Oh, you have the color copy, sorry. That definitely is not comparable. And then I had that, the other comparable, which is closest to the subject, is 125 Higgins, comparable number 6. 125 is Higgins. The assessor has it at 816 a square foot. Actually, it's not. They're asking $695 for it, and that's from Canadian or Winnipeg real estate firm. And you can see it has lots of windows in the front of it. And as they advertise it, they state that it's beautifully renovated office space building with 2 levels of offices, 38,290 square feet, 60 parking stalls, hardwood floors, some brick exposed, multiple offices, 3 boardrooms and break rooms, trendy, very comfortable work atmosphere with water feature, fully updated mechanical systems. So in there, you'll see what the inside of that building looks like, pictures. It's a beautiful building. I'm actually shocked that they're only asking $695 for it, but I guess that's all you can get for it. But with the waterfall, that's a beautiful space. And that's definitely not comparable to the subject. So the only one that actually we had there is the one at, that's one, sorry. The only ones that he actually has is that Washington at 375 on his brief, which basically doesn't compare. And if I go through the rest, I have no idea what the other comparables he has, but I'm sure I'd find the same type of information if I had time to go through, but they're not really comparable. I don't know that for sure, but I'm just assuming. So we'll go back to my brief. When we were there, if you look at the front of the building, the bottom of that light color is actually wood. And the bottom of the wood is actually rotting. The top is metal. And that is actually rusting where it kind of comes together with the wood at the bottom. So it needs some money put into it, but it's basically an original shape. You can see the Israeli bridge right there. And the one comparable, the fancy one at 125 Higgins is actually on the other side of that bridge, 2 buildings down. So you turn to page 2. That's the, you know what, we'll turn to page 3 quickly, and you'll see at the bottom. The yellow part I have there is a 1963 edition. The piece right on Higgins is actually 1912, and the part that is on Higgins and Waterfront Drive was 1941. I'll get you turned back to page 2, and you can see some of the 1912 building where the assessor inspected it with me to see that the floors are actually old planking, and tiles have come off to reveal the old planking and some plywood. And you'll see the roof, the 2 ceiling pictures on the top. You can see how all the paper is peeling away, and there's actually sheets of siding that have been just like wood cottage siding put up there. They have the old 1x1 white cardboard tiles. They're actually on the ceiling, some of the metal copper type. Well, I don't think they'd be copper. They're like tin type tiles, 1x1 tiles that have relief in them that you'd see in old buildings. So it's pretty well original. The bottom picture, you'll see the building has no HVAC system. It actually has hanging gas heaters. So you can see in that's in the 1912 area. There's a gas heater hanging from the ceiling. For air conditioning, there's just 2 units on the ceiling that have vents that blow into the areas. So there's 2 of those. So it doesn't have an HVAC. If you turn the page where it has the picture, the aerial picture, on the top you'll see that is actually the part that's retail. And in the middle picture you'll see there's another one of those heaters. The floor is very uneven. There is a lawsuit with the city regarding to damage to the floor and to the foundation of the building due to building the Israeli freeway, because they were banging piles in right next door. So the building was constantly shaking. I have no idea where that's gone. So in 2019, the Board of Revision did reduce it from 466 to 307. And I'll say with the sale, the owner purchased the property without a real estate agent, without an appraisal, and they purchased it basically because their original building on Gomez is kitty corner right behind the building. So they thought they would just store things there and bring everything over to this building. So there was no rhyme or reason why they bought it. They just thought they could use it since they were expanding. I think they paid too much for it. So if you turn to the next page that has the city website, you'll see that the building went from 307 to 594, so that's a 93% increase. And the rent was 567, which obviously the realty rent and the BA rent is exactly the same. There was, as I stated, there is an error when they came up with this. So when the computer came up with a value, they came up with a value of a building, as you'll see in the city website there, that was retail 1963. And I would say that's probably one of the biggest problems of why the computer came up with 567. As you'll see that 3,000 square feet of the building is 1912. 37 square feet is 1941, and only 1,050 square feet, which is an unheated loading dock at the back, was built in 1963. So the building should have been coded somewhere between 1912 and 1941. Who knows, maybe 1937, 38, somewhere in there. But that 1963 is probably what drove the value of the building. So if you turn the page 5, you'll see some comparables. And they range from 350. The first one is 9 to 11 Higgins, which is in the bottom picture of that page. And that 9 and 11, 9 is the building with the picture on it on your right, and 11 is to your left, that garage, that home style piece. And directly behind it is, you'll see a little raised roof that actually has like a warehouse behind it. That building has been for rent for years. It's still for rent at $350. And I saw someone go into the building at the left, stayed for about a year, and they're gone. In my comparables at the top, you get 92 Gomez, which is just around the corner. It's basically like 312 William, the first picture, and it goes for $2.37. You've got the other comparables, Jarvis, King, William, Madison, and Ellis, all arranged. They're either multi-tenant or single. And you can see the dates. The Nyland Higgins is actually 1971, but most of the other ones are in the 40s and the 50s, which that's why the rents are the way they are. So 312 Williams there, that's the main floor that was for lease. And that's opposite the back of Red River Community College on Williams. It's got lots of windows. I think it's a superior location and nicer space. It actually was an art gallery. I think the one below that, at 911 Higgins at 350, is the most comparable to the subject property, and it's just down the street, so it's very close to the subject property. So anything that would influence rent for the area, I think that is the best comparable for that property. So we turn to the next page, page 6, you'll see that 41 Madison, that's way out near Polo Park, but that's kind of a similar type building for $4. That's actually a workshop and a retail area. And then quadruple 11 Ellis is at $395. That's a flea market in the back. So that's at $395. And then I looked at some sales. So you get 6 Charles, 981 Main, Richard, and Ella. And so the average is 2581, 2583. But the best comparable for location and for ceiling height and condition is the 981 Main Street, which sold for $21.10 per square foot. It's a better location. It's pretty well at Main and Selkirk, so it has better visibility. It's got basically no windows on it like the subject property. It has an entrance to your left there. A little cubby hole is actually an overhead door. I've been in the building just before they closed to buy some motorcycle gear, so I when it comes up to the price of $259,000, that's about what it's worth. The subject property is better, but if you threw another $100,000 into this building, it'd be superior to the subject property. It just needed lighting and some cleaning up on the inside. Someone actually did buy it and totally renovated it. But to be comparable to the subject property, it'd be $259,000. So you turn the page. That was basically the calculation I used for the border revision realty, in which I used $3.50 a square foot, which came up to $348,000, which ended up being a 15% increase in the value for realty. I think that's $3.50 is acceptable for that property, especially with the couple of comparables I have that are direct relation and very close to the property, especially the one on Higgins. So I'm looking for $3.50, and at the bottom there you'll see my calculation. And actually, there is an error because the back 1,000 square feet is not heated. It has no air conditioning. I should have used 11,237 square feet instead of the 12,287. So basically, I've come down to an annual rental there of 73,108. Rounded to 73,100, but if the board would take in consideration of my error that 1,050 square feet loading dock is not heated or air conditioned, I would request 70,560 annual rental value for that property. The board would accept my error and my recalculation. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie, any questions?
So you're relying maybe more so on asking rents?
Yes.
Okay.
Asking rents are That's the number that the owner is asking for, and if you come in and negotiate, you might get a little cheaper. But that's an asking rent, so that's the bottom line of he's asking for those properties.
Okay, and in your rebuttal evidence that you provided, comparison number 8, are you aware that the tenant that I'm using for my comparable, that 515 Waterfront Drive, is a different tenant than what you have listed here?
Oh, it could be.
Have you been in that building?
No, but the owner of 100 Higgins at the top there, he's been in the building many times. It's a friend of his, and we've talked about the building many times because on 100 Higgins, it's a large complex where their Canada Cartage used to be, and he's trying to get that tenant to move into his building, which is directly behind this building. So I spoke to the owner, Mr. Brown, the building I handle, and he's been trying to get this tenant to move to the building behind it. So we've talked a lot about that building, but I've never been in that building.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions.
Thank you. Lynn? Carrie? And I have no questions. So that concludes that property. And I think you have one more, Mr. Ack.
Yes.
Just hold that. Use these names.
That property is 2626 Portage Avenue. Jamie, you can see it. Gotta find it first.
Yeah, so this property here has a recommendation. Again, the address is 2626 Portage Avenue. The file number is 19-5129, and its business assessment ID is 31511. And so Mr. Rack had been in discussion with myself, and we were discussing coming up with a recommendation here. And we've agreed to basically flow through the realty decision here. And so we're proposing using $9.55 square foot plus the occupancy cost to lower the assessed value from $38,820 down to $36,000.
And that's based on realty, so.
Correct.
And Mr. Rack?
Yes, I've agreed. I sent the email saying I agreed to that.
Okay, thank you. That concludes that property. And take a break.
And this, I don't know if
Okay, thank you. We'll reconvene the meeting, and the next property on the docket is 1730 Gordon Avenue. And you may proceed.
so. 1730 Gordon Avenue. The file number is 19-5055. The business assessment ID is 53132. And so here, again, we have a recommendation. I was in conversation with the owner, and they weren't able to make it here in person, but they have agreed to the recommendation. And so the original assessment was $57,960, and we proposed reducing it to $52,980, and that's using a rental rate of $8.50 plus the $2.45 occupancy costs. And so they have emailed their agreement with the recommendation. I have copies if that's required. And I have been speaking with Visa as well, and she said that as long as we get an email form, citing the changes in the file number and the business ID, she thinks that it would be sufficient.
Yeah, I think so. And that's it?
Yeah, so that's it for that one.
Okay.
And why was the rent reduced?
I looked at market comparables. So those properties on Corbin, I looked the properties that I relied on were very close by.
And Carrie? I just have one question. You mentioned $8.50.
Sorry, $18.
Okay, that's what.
18, okay, I
Sorry.
wrote 850 as well.
Okay. The next one is 565 Academy Road.
Yeah, 565 Academy Road. The file number is 19-5956. And I spoke to this business owner as well. The business assessment ID is 17497. And as I mentioned, I spoke to this business owner as well. And part of the recommendation that I have is actually a reduction in area. And so we had them licensed in on basically 100% of this building, the basement, the main floor, and the second floor. We have looked over their floor plans and adjusted the areas based on what they're occupying. They are owner occupied, but they have vacated out a portion of the main floor, and they plan to try to lease that out. And so as a result, we've looked at the common areas as well that would be in the building and made an adjustment on that basis. So the rental rates that we used is $4.62 in the basement, $18.50 on the main floor, and $16.07 on the second floor. And the original assessed value was $36,420, and our proposed reduction goes down to $24,660.
Thank you. Lynn?
No questions, no.
Carrie?
Which portion are they renting, Jamie? Main floor?
So they're actually in all three floors. And it's owner occupied, so they don't have a lease, but through emails with the business owner, he provided me floor plans. And basically the grossed up areas, if you wanted to hear them, we have 654 square feet in the basement, 389 square feet on the main floor, and then 643 square feet on the second floor.
Thank you.
And I have no questions. And the next one is 333 Ellis.
Yeah, so 333 Ellis, the file number is 19-5116. And the business assessment ID is 38939, and this is Ken's Restaurant. And this recommendation here is based on the amount of area they occupy on the main floor. Basically, there is a restaurant and a lounge, but they've shut down the lounge portion. So we've adjusted the area that we've assessed them for under the business assessment. And the original assessment was $86,040. And with our revision here, we've assessed 4,948 square feet at a rate of $12.33, and then added the occupancy costs. So our revised recommendation is $73,140. And he as well emailed in his agreement with that recommendation.
Thank you. Lynn?
questions? So the lounge was closed during the last 2 years? It had nothing to do with it?
I don't know exactly when they've closed the lounge, but they don't occupy it at least within the last year, because I actually inspected it with the owner last year. And so going forward, it's been closed all of 2020, and I expect that it'll be closed for 2021 as well. I guess they were having issues with the lounge, and I guess wasn't profitable, so they've basically they own the building, so they've blocked off that portion of the building.
And I have no questions. The next one is 247 Kennedy.
So 247 Kennedy, the file number is 19-5050. The business assessment ID is 52529. This is a Subway, and this was a case where we were under the characteristics in our system. We had overstated the rent, and so we've taken a look at revising the characteristics that result in the table value, and so they're paying currently $24 a square foot, but with our revised characteristics in our model, it comes down to $22.41 a square foot, plus the occupancy costs. So the original assessment was $38,100, and we're proposing $30,780. And the owner also emailed their agreement with that recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
No question.
And Gary? I have no questions. And the next property is 18 Provencher.
So it's actually 180 Provencher.
Oh yeah, I guess I only wrote 18 down. 180 Provencher.
And so the file number there is 19-5133. And the business assessment ID is 40259. And here, I took a look at comparable rents, and I've been in this property as well as a few of my comparables. So I was prepared to recommend a reduction in the rental rate from $15.74 down to $14.50. And this takes the original assessment of $41,400 down to $38,580. And also, again, in this case, the business owner has emailed their agreement with this reduction.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have no questions.
Carrie?
Just to clarify, that was based on comparables?
Right.
Thank you.
And I have no questions. The next property is 300 Edison.
So actually for this one, we didn't have a recommendation, but I did speak to the owner, and we had been discussing the property, and he had mentioned that he did not plan to attend the hearing. So I don't know if he wanted to maybe wait till the very end just to give him an opportunity if he were to show.
Well, this is the second last one.
Right. Yeah.
And the hearing started at 1, so
Right. I
might as well proceed.
Right. Did you want me to present? Okay. So this is 300 Edison Avenue. The bake oven is the tenant. The file number, I should say, is 19-5965, and the business assessment ID is 1598. I've been speaking with the owner. He was kind enough to provide me quite a few pictures because our department is not inspecting properties right now. And so that was helpful to get a sense of the property. As I mentioned, it is a bakery as well as a sort of a corner store, kind of grocery store. And so I looked at bakeries and kind of ethnic food stores or grocery stores in the same market region. And so there is a range, but most comparable, I would say, is in around the $10 to $11 range. We have one that's fairly high here on Headmasters Row, but that is a newer development there. And so we have not proposed a reduction here, and we asked that the board confirm $10.37 per square foot as the base rent, and the overall assessment of $58,200.
Thank you. Any questions, Lynn?
You mentioned that these are all bakeries. Are they ethnic places?
Sorry, I should say they're mostly bakeries. There are a few that are larger. Some of these larger ones are actually dance studios. And
that's different from a bakery.
You may not think that they're directly comparable, but I guess
which ones are bakeries? Maybe we can just.
I don't have that information in front of me because I, to be honest, wasn't expecting to speak to it.
Okay.
But there's at least a couple of them I'm fairly certain are dance studios. However, that's less helpful. But the idea behind that is that it's a large open area, often in a retail strip mall, that is more difficult to lease, and and I think owners often are happy to get somebody in there, and it seems as though sometimes in the heel of the mall or a less desirable unit, and often I think dance studios you'll find pay a lower rent, similar to bakeries that occupy a fair bit of area, and the back portion is often not finished to the same level as the front area. That's sort of where the customers are, and so it's a roundabout way to find some comparables.
Okay, so there's actually, when I'm just looking at the area itself, that Edison area, Kingsbury would be sort of in that area, I think.
Right, and I
Or
tried
the same.
Yeah, and so I tried to stick to mostly the same area.
But Kildare is not close to Kingsbury.
Right.
Or Keewatin.
Right. When I say market region, just for a little bit more information, our system has smaller neighborhoods, and then they have a larger market area. And the market region that this is in is actually fairly large. So
Takes in quite a bit. Right?
when I say they're in the same market region, they're not
in the same
close
neighborhood
per se. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And Carrie?
So in conversation with the owner, I'm assuming they did not agree?
They did not agree with our position. They did not agree, and I did try to make it clear to them that it is their prerogative to come and discuss it, and that.
And was the owner forthcoming on why they were not going to appear?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a number of times, and we had candid discussions, and I think they just sort of felt at that point that they maybe it wasn't worth it to them to continue on with this endeavor. I tried to, again, reinforce that it's his right to appear and to disagree, and that there is the option to appear remotely. And I certainly was not interested to dissuade him from continuing it forward, but he had expressed to me that he just at that point decided he wasn't going to pursue it further.
Okay. So he wasn't concerned about appearing in person because of current situation?
No, he didn't express that, at least, to me. And I did let him know that they are accepting appearance remotely through, I believe it's Zoom, and that didn't seem to change his mind.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have no questions. So that concludes the hearing today. Thank you, everyone.
I think we may have
There's one
more.
more. Sorry about that. Oh, yes, 2630 Portage Ave.
Yeah, so 2630 Portage Avenue, the file number is 19-5051. The business assessment ID is 4782. And here I had been speaking to the owner again here, and I had agreed to basically remain consistent with our position at the realty, which was a recommendation to reduce the rental rate from $10.60 in this case down to $9.74. And so the original assessed value was $36,840, and the recommended value is $34,440. And again, I have email acceptance of our recommendation.
Thank you. Lynn? Carrie?
No questions.
And I have no questions. So that now concludes this hearing today. Thank you very much.